Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This is a talk given by Elder Neal A. Maxwell, April 1992 General Conference. The name of the talk is My Servant Joseph. Now, my brethren, these are your days in the history of the church. Mark well what kind of days they will be. Days when, with special visibility, the Lord will make bare his holy arm in the eyes of all the nations. God will also hasten his work. He will also shorten the last days for the elect's sake. Hence, there will be a compression of events. And you guys, things are happening at such a rapid pace. You know, as I keep this second coming timeline and do this channel. And when I look to, earlier this year, like say February, March, April, it feels like that was so long ago because of how much has happened this year. And here in this video, I'm going to present a new thing that's happened. I got an email from Daniel Hershey. He just put the link to this article that takes you to Church News. And it says, with full-time missionary numbers exceeding 72,000, church to create 36 new missions worldwide. That is a really large number in my mind. 36 new missions. And this article is full of very interesting information, very interesting quotes, and there's a lot to look at. So we're going to be looking at this. We're going to be looking at missionary numbers, and we're going to do some more talk about these different generations. I recently did a video where we went over generational quotes, where a general authority was speaking to a particular generation and essentially saying that they are the generation that'll see the second coming, the millennium, that will be the last ones, the last generation of these last days, things like that. And I actually have a new quote that's on that spreadsheet. So I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. And we'll also cover this article and a few other articles that are related. This is going to be a really interesting one. So before all that, let me give you the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. We're at 7,205 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. So we just crossed over the 7,200 mark. And we have 756 people that have joined the challenge. We're trying to get to 1,000. So if you haven't already, please consider doing so. Just share a copy of the Book of Mormon. Send me a comment in any video or an email, and then include #flood. And then I'll add your numbers to this tracker, which I think helps motivate people, other people to share the Book of Mormon, which is why we're doing it. Okay, so good job, everybody. So let's go ahead and let me share you this new quote that was sent to me. This is from a comment on my video where I went over the entire spreadsheet. The handle for this account is Plaid's Politics. And this is the quote. This is by Ezra Taft Benson, October 1986 General Conference, to the young women of the church. And he says, "You have been born at this time for a sacred and glorious purpose." That's pretty interesting. "It is not by chance that you've been reserved to come to the earth in this last dispensation of the fullness of times. Your birth at this particular time was foreordained in the eternities. You are to be the royal daughters of the Lord in the last days. You are youth of the noble birthright." So I went ahead and I added that to my timeline, or to my spreadsheet where I'm collecting all these different generational quotes. And this was said in 1986. So it's down here. So that actually makes it so I have two quotes in 1986, both of which are from Ezra Taft Benson. Ezra Taft Benson made a lot of these generational quotes. Some of them more explicit, some not as much. But when you take all these together, it seems pretty clear that they're thinking about a particular generation of the church. So and not just like one, like by our definition, like Generation X or whatever, but just like right now, this period, ever since essentially the 70s until this point. Now, you might notice that I've added two new columns. It's column D and column E, where what I did is I wanted to have a way to visualize and know who they're talking to, like what generation. Most of these quotes, not all of them, but most of them are to the youth of the church at that time. So what I did is I went by this graph, this chart on Wikipedia, and other sources roughly line up with these years. There's like variations when you go from source to source, but this is roughly the generations. You know, here you have the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Generation Z, and Alpha. So I went by these dates. And what I did is I took the earliest date and then added 12. Okay. Because by that time, 12 years after that first date, that the people born that year would be 12 years old and therefore in priesthood or young women's. And then I took the latest date and added 17 because that would be like the last year that, for example, you'd have a baby boomer that was still in young men's or young women's. So like you take 1964, which was the last year of baby boomers being born. I added 17, which brought them up to their last year of being in young men and young women's. So that's how I came up with these columns. Okay. So essentially the first several quotes on here, starting in 1967, when they're referring to the youth of the church of that day, it's mostly referring to the baby boomers from 1967 until 1981. So you had Hugh B. Brown, Harold B. Lee, O. Leslie Stone, Russell M. Nelson, Ezra Taft Benson speaking to the baby boomers. Okay, let me fix that. And then, starting with Ezra Taft Benson, he's mostly talking to Generation X, him, Neal A. Maxwell, Vaughn J. Featherstone, Boyd K. Packer, Gordon B. Hinckley, and Richard G. Scott. And right here in the early 90s, that's when it starts to transition from Generation X to the millennials. And you have Gordon B. Hinckley, James E. Faust, Joseph B. Wirthlin, and that's pretty much it. And then you have President Nelson when the millennials are now in college, and he gave that talk called Becoming True Millennials. So that would be right here. Now they're college age. So you see how this works. And then from that point forward, it's mostly, these other quotes are mostly to Generation Z. Generation Alpha won't really, be in play. Well, they just kind of barely started to come into play in 2022. So for the last few years, it's mostly been to Generation Z. Generation Z goes from 1997 to 2012. All right. Okay. So that's what I've added to that spreadsheet. If you come back here and you reference this, which you can anytime, the link for my spreadsheets is in the description box below, and you can come and look at all this. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get back to this article. With full-time missionary numbers exceeding 72,000, church to create 36 new missions worldwide. And here they are. So you have a couple in Europe. Seems like most of them are in North America, in the Caribbean. And then after that, South America and Southeast Asia primarily, and then Africa as well. Okay. With its more than 72,000 full-time missionaries exceeding pre-COVID-19 pandemic totals, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will add 36 new missions worldwide next summer to accommodate the growing numbers, joining the 414 existing missions across the globe. The addition of the 36, the addition of the new 36 will bring the total to 450 missions, the most ever in church history. So we are witnessing the breaking of a record in church history, the most missions the church has ever had. That's pretty exciting. Now, before I continue with this article, because there's a lot more things to look at here, I was wondering, and I think I've done this before, I was wondering, okay, 72,000, that sounds like quite a bit, but I need to go back and see what have other years had for the number of missionaries. And so there's a couple things. First, I came across this website called Latter-day Saint Mission Prep. And they have an article here that has information that comes from a few different sources. But you can look at this and see essentially what previous numbers were like in the church. So the year where we had the most missionaries, according to this, was in 2014. Okay. And we just talked about having 72,000. So you see this line right here, 70,000. So if this table or if this graph had this year, it would be like right here. So not as high as these other couple years, but it is definitely rebounding, especially when you look back to 2020 and basically from 2017 until now, things have really rebounded. And then later, there is a table that you can look at. Okay, sorry, let me zoom out. Okay, number of missionaries called. I don't think it was that one. Oh yeah, right here. This is where I highlighted. Okay. So here you go. So the year in which we had the most missionaries was 2014 with 85,147. After that, it was the year before, 2013, with 83,000. And then 2015 is in third place with 74,000. So essentially this year at 72,000, 2023 is in fourth place. And I guess we'll have to see how things progress in the years to come. So that's not bad. There's only 3 other years that are ahead of where we're at right now. But regardless of that, the number of missions is going to be record-breaking, even though we don't have as many missionaries as 2013. We're going to have a record number of missions throughout the world. So that's pretty exciting. And I don't know, maybe it's in anticipation of more missionaries to come. Maybe we will get back up into the 80,000s. Maybe that's what the church's projections show. Maybe that's why they're doing this. And that's exciting to think about. Maybe they're confident enough to where we're going to blow past or we'll go past 83,000, which will warrant all these missions. I don't know, but that's just something to think about. As I was researching the number of missionaries, I came across this article. This is from Deseret News, and it's from June 28th of this year. And frankly, I can't remember if we've already looked at this, but if we have, this is a good review. The number of Latter-day Saint missionaries is rising rapidly. The number of missionaries representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has increased significantly over the past year, with numbers expected to top 72,000 by the end of 2023. And that came to pass. We are at that point. And I don't know if it's going to go even further, but we still have at least a couple more months left in the year. The announcement about the influx of young missionaries was made by Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the Provo Missionary Training Center last week. Elder Cook, chairman of the church's missionary executive council, and other church leaders who serve on that council, unveiled an updated version of Preach My Gospel, a manual used by missionaries and church members to help them share information about the church. Fewer children are being born today in most countries, and yet, even, quote, with fewer available, more are going out, Elder Cook said. And then he continues, if you look at the youth, their activity rate is higher than it has been. So that is pretty interesting. Less children being born, but more missionaries going on missions. That's pretty incredible. Okay, continuing. Convert baptisms have also increased, Elder Cook said, up 25% in the first quarter of 2023 compared to last year. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since church president Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022. From 56,000 at the end of 2021 to 68,000 by June 14th of this year. Quote, and we really do feel like we'll exceed 72,000 by the end of the year, Elder Cook said. And again, it looks like that came to be. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about the April 2022 General Conference and how, especially in the first two Saturday sessions, there was a lot of talk about going on a mission and stories about people going on missions and just a lot of missionary talk. And you can kind of see that on my spreadsheet here. This is my timeline, phrases, high frequency terms spreadsheet. This is a tally of the number of talks that include these words. So the ones that we're looking at right now, mission, missionary, missionaries. And you can see in 2022, there's a darker line compared to previous years across all three of these terms. Not that they're record-breaking years in and of themselves for using these words. You can see that there was an uptick in 2022. Now, what's interesting, however, in addition to that, is look at these years right here, 2023, 2012, and 2011. The word missionary suddenly really took off in those 3 years. And we were just talking about the fact that if we go back here, that 2013, 2014, 2015, those were the three biggest years for the number of missionaries. So them talking about missionary work in General Conference so much and calling for people to go on a mission, it worked. It really did work. I can't remember if this was the time that the mission age was lowered, or maybe that was before that. I'm not sure. But whatever the case, what followed was you had these 3 years, lots of talk about missionaries and missionary work, and then suddenly there were a lot of missionaries. And now the same thing is happening, although it was just that one conference, April 2022. And now we've almost rebounded back to what it was back in 2013, 14, 15. So that's really interesting. We also talked about the fact that, and this is interesting, how, again, I've repeated this many times on the channel, but there's always new people joining, and I just feel like it's something that should be talked about. We've talked about the fact that in 2020, we had this very unusual event where there was an earthquake in Magna, Utah, which is in the West Valley, which caused the angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple to drop his trumpet. And if you're looking at this symbolically, it's pretty clear that the angel has stopped, warning the people, that he stopped trumpeting, right? It's not a good sign. And it turns out what happened was when this happened, okay, let's go to my Second Coming timeline. When this happened on the 18th of March, 2020, 2 days later, the First Presidency put out their statement in their letter calling missionaries back home and essentially reducing missionary work. So things went quiet, just like the Angel Moroni on the top of the Salt Lake Temple. Things went quiet. And then 6 days after that, all temples were closed worldwide due to the pandemic. Okay. So that's really interesting. And then what happened was, a couple years go by. We get to the April 2022 General Conference, and there was a big call out for missionaries. So now, instead of being quiet, it's time to get loud again. And after that General Conference, on August 13th, there was a meteor that went over northern Utah that caused a loud boom. And it was heard all the way from southern Idaho, all the way down to Provo, Utah. So that would have included Salt Lake City. And what's interesting is that the dates are mere dates, meaning when the Angel Moroni dropped his trumpet, it was March 18th. So 3/18, March 18th. And the day that the boom happened was on August 13th. Okay, 8/13. So in 2020, it was 3/18. 2022, it was 8/13. Very interesting, very odd, very fitting. And they both correspond to those respective events. Missionaries coming home, a silence, you could say, maybe a silence in heaven. I don't know. And now things getting loud. And now we're, just today we're getting articles like this. Well, just this year and today we're getting articles like this. This was put out today, wasn't it? Yeah. November 1st. So very, very interesting. Okay. So let's go back here. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since Church President Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022. From 56,000 at the end of 2021 to 68,000 by June 14th of this year. Quote, and we really do feel like we'll exceed 72,000 by the end of the year, Elder Cook said, and that has happened. The influx of missionary applications led to a need for more members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles to make mission assignments. Typically, 2 apostles assign mission calls weekly, but in recent months, as many as 4 apostles. Let me highlight that. As many as 4 apostles have been making up to 300 calls a week, Elder Cook said. So that's an interesting little tidbit. From 2 to 4 because of an influx, because of President Nelson's call in April 2022 General Conference. Much of this runs counter to the popular narrative that young people are less religious today. Yet new data tracking attitudes across generations shows an uptick in religiosity among the religious members of the millennial and Gen Z generations compared to baby boomers and Gen X. Okay, so that's really interesting too. According to research by Professor Justin Dyer at BYU, the most recent generation overall places less importance on religion and attends religious services less frequently than previous generations. However, this does not hold for youth of some denominations, including Latter-day Saints. So our church stands apart from the general trend that's going on in the rest of the world. Keep that in mind because we're going to look at something else in just a minute that's related to that. Including Latter-day Saints, where attitudes among the recent generations, millennials and Gen Z, are on par with or actually more favorable to religion than some earlier generations. We asked how often they attend religious services and how important religion is in their lives. Latter-day Saints who are part of millennial or Gen Z generations were just as likely, and sometimes more likely than prior generations, to say they go to church or that religion is an important part of their lives. This contradicts the popular notion of young people being less beholden to faith. Quote, in comparing the generations when they were high school seniors, millennial Latter-day Saint youth feel religion is more important than all other generations. And even though Gen Z declines somewhat, they are at least as religious as baby boomers. They were at least as religious as baby boomers were when they were high school seniors, Dyer said. So, I don't know. Maybe there's something to President Nelson saying that, this generation of millennials are true millennials, And as we're looking at these different groups, it seems like they're doing pretty good, actually, compared to the rest of the world. The phenomenon church leaders are seeing among young people who are signing up to go on missions is that they are responding in higher numbers, in higher percentages than previous generations, Elder Cook said. That's interesting too. At this point, maybe we should talk about the Lord's Youth Battalion. So if we're looking at the age groups that were present during the worldwide youth devotional called Hope of Israel, where President Nelson first introduced the idea of the Lord's Youth Battalion, all of them are Generation Z. Generation spelled this way. So all of them are Generation Z. And so I've added 2 new columns for future reference. Column C, the generation that they're in, and then column B, the year that they were born. Okay. So basically, this group of people, the Lord's Youth Battalion, the oldest of them were born around the year 2000. So, they're the ones that are responding to these mission calls. The 18-year-olds at that time started their missions around 2018. And right now, the ones that are going on their missions are basically the ones that were 14, 13, and 12 years old in 2018, born in 2004, 5, and 6. So these are the ones that are part of this group, this influx that's taking place. Okay, let's go back here. So they are responding in higher numbers and higher percentages than previous generations. As Elder Marcus B. Nash, a General Authority 70 and the executive director of the church's missionary department, said at the Missionary Training Center, quote, "There's just something going on, and I don't know how to explain it other than the prophet spoke in April 2022. And this rising generation," there's that phrase, "that he teaches us was held in reserve, are responding." Yeah. Well, and maybe it's not just what was said in April 2022. Maybe it includes also the Hope of Israel Worldwide Youth Devotional, and then all the other things that President Nelson has said. Again, let's go back to this. So let's go to, here you go. You have, and most of these are from President Nelson. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 different generational quotes from President Nelson since he became president of the church. Let me make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, sorry, 4. There are 4 generational quotes since he's become president of the church. Including this one where he told them at FSY that we're in the last half of the 9th inning. So there's been a lot of generational talk lately. President Nelson, Elder David A. Bednar, Elder Rasband, President Eyring. So there's been a lot. It's probably a combination of all these things, including the April 2022 General Conference. Okay, I wanted to hop over here as well. This is from Times of Israel. And I wanted to show you something that I've shared before on the channel that has to do with our Jewish counterparts. Young Israeli Jews are mostly right-wing, increasingly religious, survey says. A majority of young Israeli Jews between ages 15 to 24 define themselves as right-wing, and a growing number of them are religious, a study published Thursday said. By the way, this is from May 12th, 2017. That's when this was published. 67% of Jewish youth define themselves as right-wing or center-right, while just 16% consider themselves to be left-wing in findings from a survey of Israeli youth by the Macro Center for Political Economics and the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, cited Thursday in a Yediot Heronot report. In a similar survey by the two organizations 19 years ago, 50% of respondents classified themselves as secular, compared to 9% who referred to themselves as ultra-Orthodox. Those numbers moved to 40% and 15% respectively in this year's edition, demonstrating increased religious tendencies. Okay, so let's do that again. So 19 years ago, 50% said that they were secular, and that has dropped to only 40% that say that they're secular. So the number of seculars have gone down. And then the ultra-Orthodox went from 9% and increased 6 percentage points to 15%. So they're becoming more religious. That's really interesting. And then there's another thing here. This is also from the Times of Israel study. Young Jews are just as religious as their parents. Pew Research Center survey finds younger Christians and Muslims are less religious than their elders. So compared to Christians and Muslims, the Jews are at least maintaining as far as like how religious they are, according to this, whereas the rest of the world, or at least Christians and Muslims, are declining in their religious views. Jewish young adults in the U.S. and Israel are, on average, just as religious as their elders, even though young people worldwide are largely less religious than their parents, a new study found. If the findings seem to contradict a perception of slipping religiosity among Jews in the U.S. and Israel, the study explains that is partly due to higher birth rates among Orthodox Jews than other denominations. Quote, Orthodox Jews who tend to have more children make up a growing share of both Jewish populations and thus a larger percentage of young Jewish adults, it said. Okay, so let me just, in case there's any misunderstanding here, I'm not sure that they're talking exactly about the same age groups. It seems like this previous one was talking about a younger group, maybe. Well, maybe not, 15 to 24. Whereas this one is just talking about young adults, it seems. I don't really know. But this one says that there's more, they're becoming more religious than secular, as well as Orthodox. And then this one is talking about like when comparing generations, that they're just as religious as previous generations. They're not slipping like the rest of the world is. And that's something that we have in common with them, that our church, we're not slipping. In fact, these generations being talked about, millennials, Generation Z, are actually more religious than, if anything, than previous generations. So that's an interesting link between our church and the Jews. And it's probably because of the spirits that are being sent here at this time in preparation for the second coming and the millennium. It's really interesting. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, that was the end of that article. Now let's get back to this first article. talking about the 36 new missions. Okay. Um, Church leaders, including Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, who chairs the Missionary Executive Council, and Elder Marcus B. Nash, General Authority 70, who is Executive Director of the Missionary Department, spoke about the new missions and acknowledged missionary numbers in a media briefing Wednesday morning, November 1st. So this is today, at the time that I'm recording this, at the Conference Center in Salt Lake City. Additionally, Elder Ronald A. Rasband of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and Sister Amy A. Wright, first counselor in the primary general presidency, who both also sit on the Missionary Executive Council, attended the meeting. The increase in missionary numbers and the resulting addition of new missions is attributed to President Russell M. Nelson's call as prophet and president of the church for more missionaries, which he made in April 2022 General Conference, said Elder Cook. Quote, "We are incredibly grateful for the response we have seen by so many young people to our beloved prophet's clarion call for missionary service in April of last year," Elder Cook said in a news release posted on churchofjesuschrist.org. "We are witnessing an increased enthusiasm for sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world. These new missions spread all around the world will be a blessing locally as we desire to have more missionaries supporting the units of the church." All right, policy adjustment on application period. Okay, so they're having to change things around because of the influx. Church leaders participating in Wednesday's media briefing also acknowledged a policy Oh my gosh. Church leaders participating in Wednesday's media briefing also acknowledged a policy adjustment, with prospective missionaries able to submit their missionary applications up to 150 days prior to their availability date, rather than 120 days currently allowed. Well, I would say this is probably, along with everything else, a hastening of the work. It's getting people ready to go sooner. The benefits of the change are multifold. One, giving prospective missionaries more time to prepare for their missions. Number two, shortening the period between a prospective missionary's availability date and mission start date. And three, helping to reduce visa delays for missionaries assigned to serve outside their home countries. Yeah, it seems like a hastening to me. That's what it sounds like to me. At the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in late 2019 and early 2020, the church counted some 69,000 young teaching and service missionaries and senior missionaries. The pandemic resulted in international closures and restriction, and the resulting return of many missionaries, some released from service and others reassigned, mostly to home countries. The number grew to 56,000 at the end of 2021. Well, and I don't know. I'd like to know grew from what? What was like the rock bottom? I don't know. So anyway, the number grew to 56,000 at the end of 2021, to 65,000 at the end of 2022, and to more than 72,000 today, which includes nearly 5,300 senior missionaries. Combined, today's missionaries serve in more than 150 countries and teach in more than 60 languages. What's going on here? Sister missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints cheer on the parade participants during the annual Days of 47 parade in Salt Lake City. They look pretty enthusiastic. That must have been some parade. The prophet's clarion call. President Nelson, Elder Cook, and several other church leaders spoke during the April 2022 General Conference of Missionary Work, emphasizing service by young men, young women, and senior couples. In his Saturday morning session address, President Nelson taught that the gospel of Jesus Christ has never been needed more than it is today, as, quote, the only enduring solution for peace, end quote. Adding that Latter-day Saints have, quote, the sacred responsibility to share the power and peace of Jesus Christ with all who will listen and who will let God prevail in their lives, end quote. Then came the call to the young men. Quote, today I reaffirm strongly that the Lord has asked every worthy, able young man to prepare for and serve a mission. He said, explaining that missionary service is a priesthood responsibility for Latter-day Saint young men. Continuing, he says, you young men have been reserved for this time when the promised gathering of Israel is taking place. As you serve missions, you play a pivotal role in this unprecedented event. I wonder what he's referring to. It seems like he's talking about now, not necessarily this last dispensation as a whole. I think that's what he's referring to. I think he's talking about the fact that he's called the Lord's Youth Battalion, and that you have like this next wave of missionaries that's going on. I could be wrong, but it seems like that's what he's talking about when he says unprecedented event. President Nelson also invited sisters to consider missionary service. For you young and able sisters, a mission is also a powerful but optional opportunity, he said, expressing the church leaders' love for them and their wholehearted welcome. What you contribute to this work is magnificent. Pray to know if the Lord would have you serve a mission, and the Holy Ghost will respond to your heart and mind. Reminding his dear young friends that you are each vital to the Lord, President Nelson said the decision to serve a mission, either proselyting or service, will bless each individual and many others. He also welcomed senior couples to serve when circumstances permit. Quote, all missionaries teach and testify of the Savior. The spiritual darkness in the world makes the light of Jesus Christ needed more than ever. New missions, new mission leaders. The increase in missions will also result in the calling of 34 additional mission leadership couples who will attend the 2024 seminar for new mission leaders next June. With more missions and leaders worldwide, mission leaders will have more interactions with missionaries, and more missionaries will be assigned to more local wards and branches. Now, I want to tell you something. I don't know how I would feel being called as a new mission president and having to open up a brand new mission from scratch. I don't know the whole process. You know, if you were a mission president, feel free to put it in the comments below. But that seems like a pretty daunting task. Like, I wouldn't even know what to do. And I know that there's, you know, at least there's like a seminar. I'm sure maybe there's like some other training or something like that, something to help you get going. But, man, that's pretty intense, opening up a brand new mission. When I was on my mission as a missionary, me and my companion, we opened up a new area. So I guess that was okay, but that's a little bit different from opening up a brand new mission. But I don't know, but it'll all work out, and it's exciting. It's going to be an exciting opportunity for all these people. Okay, the 36 new missions. The 36 new missions to be created out of the existing missions will become effective July 1st, 2024, and are in 18 of the church's 22 worldwide areas. So maybe there's like something that the existing missions like will provide to the new ones. Like, I don't know. Okay. So again, here's the map of all the new missions where they're going to be roughly. And I was interested at this, the church's 22 worldwide areas. I don't know, like, if there's somewhere on the church website where you can see those. I know that it used to be, I don't know if it still is because we don't get hard copies anymore of the Liahona, but I know that they kind of like used to put like a thing in the ensign, I think, that kind of like had the different areas, I think. But I tried to search it, and this is what I came up with. So this is on Wikipedia, and I don't think that this is 100% up to date, but this is like roughly what it looks like, the different areas of the church. Brazil is its own area. Mexico is its own area. And then, you have all the rest of them. Let's see, I think I can't remember if there was something in this article I wanted to read. No. Wikipedia, area, LDS Church. Has a little history here. The areas as they now exist were formed in January 1984. Prior to that time, general authorities served as area supervisors and at times resided outside of Salt Lake City. In 1984, 13 initial areas were created. By 1992, there were 22. By early 2007, there were 31. As of April 2022, there are 23 areas. Well, and according to this article that we just read that was published today, there are now 22. So that's kind of it. It's an interesting concept to me. I don't know why. We kind of talk about a little bit how Elder Bednar is over the Middle East. So that's kind of interesting and exciting. I don't know. I'm just geographically minded. And so I like maps. I like, things like this, mission boundaries and church areas and stuff like that. So, okay. So as of right now, though, there are 22. There are 22. Okay, let's go back here. That pretty much wraps it up. So it's a lot to think about, but things are happening. What I would like to believe is that this big influx of missionaries will continue to grow, and maybe it will. Maybe we'll get back up to the what was it? Was it 85,000? Oh gosh, I got to find it again. No, that was on this website. Yeah, 85,000. Maybe there's a chance that we can get back to 85,000 and maybe beyond. I'd like to think that, like I've expressed before on the channel, that this Lord's Youth Battalion and this generation of missionaries and this influx that we're seeing, I'd like to think that this is the transition team. The ones going out to, the rescue parties, to the last wagon, and then those that'll pave the way into the millennium, the first missionaries at the beginning of the millennium. I really hope that that's what we're seeing. But putting that aside, again, having so many missions created at the same time, I don't know. That is a lot. That's huge. And we'll have to wait and see if there's even more that are created later on. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.